There's been fierce blowback and calls for an investigation after reports that federal officers are pulling Portland protesters into unmarked vans. The reports raise various questions. Among them, are the feds driving unmarked vehicles? The video suggests, yes, they are driving an unmarked van, which is not uncommon for federal law enforcement. But a former U.S. Attorney for Oregon under the Obama administration says transparency is critical.
Look, it's just central for accountability that we know who's doing the arresting, who's being arrested, and what they're being arrested for. You can't hold folks accountable. You can't ensure that we're following the rules and following the Constitution if you don't do that.
Another question, are the feds arresting people without probable cause? That's the claim. In an interview with OPB and the Washington Post, one Portland protester said he was searched and placed in a holding cell in the federal courthouse. He was later released with no record of his arrest. The U.S. Attorney's Office has asked for an independent review from the Office of Inspector General. Are the feds making arrests away from the U.S. courthouse? Yes. Court records indicate federal officers have spotted someone who committed a crime, then tracked them down elsewhere and made an arrest. And finally, who are these federal officers? Federal law enforcement, including the U.S. Marshals, Federal Protective Service, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and Homeland Security, were called in earlier this month from outside the area to help protect federal buildings in downtown Portland. On Thursday, the interim head of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security visited Portland.
So we need to make sure that we're supporting our law enforcement officers here and making sure that they're going to continue to protect the federal courthouse here. That's what DHS does.
Homeland Security responded to the criticism with a statement explaining that federal officers seen in the video could be identified because they wore Customs and Border Protection insignia, and they moved the suspect out of the area in a van because a, quote, violent mob was moving toward their location, although no such group could be seen or heard in the video. Kyle Aboshi, KGW News.